Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whichever part of the world you are logging in for this live session. Thank you so much for joining us. This is ICF India Conclave 2021 Coaching for Growth. Individuals, teams, organization, and systems. Today we are talking about leadership coaching. This is a panel discussion where we are going to explore various aspects of leadership coaching, and we have a very chosen panel. In fact, these are the deserving leaders who have been there, done that in leadership coaching. Typically, when you search for coaching in Google or leadership coaching, you get plenty of results thrown. You may be wondering where to begin. And this panel could give you a nugget, a two, to take it forward. I have an extreme privilege and honor to introduce Andrew Nitlich. He holds a PCC credential from ICF, and he has done a graduation in cultural anthropology from Harvard University, and he followed with an MBA. After graduating with distinction, he had stints at Wall Street, real estate, and even in Kenya in a micro business. After which he moved to multi-million dollar consulting engagements, and that's where he realized. That's where he realized that it's important for the clients not only to know how to implement these solutions, but also make it really sustainable. That's when he discovered coaching. He has trained and developed more than 3,200 professionals. He's written a number of books. One of them really might catch your attention: Guerrilla Marketing for Coaches, 6 Steps to Building Your $1 Million Coaching Practice. And as a fun fact, he's known for his humor, getting to the point, talking straight, and doing whatever he can to help his clients and members succeed. Andrew plays tennis as often as he can, reads a lot of detective novels, enjoys life in Sarasota, Florida, with his wife and 3 children. Thank you, Andrew, for being with us. Really appreciate your presence.
Thank you as well.
Now, let me also introduce you to the next panelist, Dr. Brian Underhill. He's the founder and CEO of Coach Source. Many of you may have heard Coach Source as a premier institution for all the coaches. Brian has done a BA in psychology from University of Southern California, followed by MS degree in psychology from California School of Professional Psychology. He also holds a PhD. He is a PCC from ICF. He has advanced certification in Goldsmith coaching process. Brian is the founder and CEO of Coach Source. This is the world's largest executive coaching firm with over 1,100 coaches in 100 plus countries. Brian is also a pioneer in a tool called mini surveys. I'm sure in today's panel, he will elaborate more on that, which is a unique measurement tool to help impact behavioral change over time. Brian is a co-editor of Mastering Executive Coaching, and he has also authored Executive Coaching for Results, the definitive guide to developing organizational leaders. A fun fact about Brian is he enjoys music as a worship leader, racquetball, and spending time with his family. Now, let me also introduce you a friend of mine for many years, Uday Kumar Gopalakrishnan, who is a master certified coach. During his 27 years of experience, rich corporate experience, he has written many books. He has also been to various countries, attending different kinds of programs under his belt. He is an OD consultant. He graduated from Loyola College, postgraduate diploma in HR from XLRI. Many of us have read or experienced NTL as an institution where Uday has been a faculty there, which really makes me proud that we have someone amongst us who have been recognized by the elite of the elite. And he has been a master certified coach by ICF. He is a master practitioner, EMCC Belgium. He's a certified professional coach from International Coach Academy, Australia, accredited debriefer and coach from Harrison Assessment International, EQ fellow and assessor by 6 seconds. 3 books that he has written. I have one of them. It's like a mini MBA. What it takes to be a leader with passion. That's the book I'm talking about. The other two books, which I want to be a proud owner soon, are Pause with Questions and Scout for Answers. Stay on the road to mastery. Uday was conferred with Lifetime Achievement Award by Lions Club International and Chroma for exceptional contribution in HR arena. He is a founder and CEO of his dream venture, Core Mind, established way back in 1993. And he has been in various corporate roles before starting his venture. He is an avid follower of cricket, tennis, and he loves to listen to melody songs and reading. And now it's my honor and pleasure to hand it over to Uday so that he could conduct this panel and help us explore leadership coaching. Thank you, Uday. Over to you. You are on mute, Uday. Can you? Yeah.
Thank you, Bhaskar, for introducing the way you did Andrew, Brian, and self. Very kind, warm, very personal, and generous. Well, I'm extremely privileged to be with this elite panel whom I've been interacting in the last 1 week or 10 days. We've been doing a lot of groundwork, homework, call it what may. But the design and the flow of this session have been richly contributed by their perspectives. And I'm really happy that we did that work before we present ourselves to you. The title of this session is Exploring Leadership Coaching. I would like to pause the word exploring. It is continuous, present continuous, and therefore, to me, it's a journey. It's a journey in becoming or being better and better to be on the road to mastery. And that in the context of leadership coaching. It's emerging as a much sought after intervention in the arenas of organization development and leadership capability. Yes, I'm talking about leadership coaching. World over, there is evidence and increasing evidence of that, of developing coaching to be or become an imperative need and the vehicle for transforming leaders and the corporate corridors, irrespective of the industry and the geographical location. Over time, leadership coaching is on the way to replace traditional approaches for learning and development, like training, activity-based work around learning, and also process-centric learning. Having been through the roots of having been a structured trainer, more into process work, more into facilitation, more into OD consultation, I am actually not fathoming, but I'm experiencing this journey, which is happening in the way that I'm talking about leadership coaching, stepping into the shoes, stepping into the hearts, stepping into the corridors, stepping to really make this fabric of organizational culture a lot more tuned and proactive and receptive to coaching interventions. And now in the wake of the turbulent times that we are in, the VUCA has really been experienced with the advent of the pandemic, where the abilities of becoming more nimble-footed, responsive, and innovative is becoming the necessary order of the day. There's no two ways about it. It's inevitable, and we need to really adapt. And therefore, the leaders are subjected to a lot more demands, speed of execution, quickness in decision making, nimble-footed to be more risk-oriented, though you can add the right calculated risk-oriented, gain confidence, pick up, acquire, sustain, and again reshape and reinvent competences on the fly. And all this, in the ideal sense, the aspiration level of retaining the equanimity and the balance. Well, we are here to explore a few questions. We are here to explore leadership coaching. This panel is unfolding to really bring to you all and experience along with you and co-learn along with you as we move and navigate this panel. Well, Having said that, there are a lot of connotations, and therefore each of those connotations have their own shades and questions too. And these questions get into more reflections, and these reflections generate narrative framing and no doubt reframing on the move, on the fly. So we would explore in this panel, what is it really meant in terms of the context of leadership coaching, stepping up, opening the doors and avenues for not just coaches, but also sponsors and the entire ecosystem of the stakeholders within and outside the organizational peripheral boundaries. What are the tips and traps to be kept in mind for ensuring the desired outcomes of sponsors and their clients are helpful or helped or enabled by seasoned and credentialed coaches? How does leadership coaching generate an ambience to become more effective in employee engagement, to enhance the quotients of pride, a sense of belongingness, and also becoming more and more passionate? And also, what could be the practice set of applications which are assuming standards and best practices in developing and reinventing models of practices as we move further from current to look at envisioning the future as how it beholds us and how it appears before us. As I'm talking, it's emerging. As you're listening, it's emerging, and therefore we are on a sort of a track where the momentum is very high. It's almost like being on a treadmill where we can't apply the pause, but it's on and on and on. It's like the flywheel sort of momentum. Having said that, I'd like to, at this point in time, invite Andrew, going by the alphabet A before B, Brian. Well, Andrew, in your perception, as I am sharing this question to you, you can reflect and get back to the audience. How do you really advocate in this exploration of leadership coaching to make it more institutionalized and make it more effective? And in the process, perhaps, my hypothesis, which I shared at the beginning, to replace traditional interventions like training. Would you like to share some insights and some data around this, which indicates such movement or indicates such outcomes or impact? Over to you, Andrew.
Sure. Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to be here as well. Where I would go, the most successful executive and leadership coaches that I work with tend to provide a variety of services. So they provide coaching, they also facilitate, they also train. To give one set of examples, I do a lot of work with employee engagement, improving engagement in organizations. And in a number of clients, particularly in healthcare, we've actually measured before and after results. Usually these initiatives start with a training. So for instance, at one healthcare system, I worked to train over a week 175 managers on their engagement, on how to improve engagement, right? We have a methodology to do that. At the same time, measurement is very important. Each of these managers worked with a company that measured employee engagement. They knew their employee engagement scores. They knew them for the organization. And so they were charged to improve engagement scores in the organization and in their own unit. So we had training, we had measurement. At the end of the training, they were charged to come up with a plan for how they'd improve employee engagement in their own area of responsibility. And that's where coaching took over. And so over the next 6 months, a select group of these managers were coached, and we compared them to managers that only had training, and we compared them to managers that had no training and no coaching. And without a doubt, there was statistically significant improvement in engagement from the managers who had the training, plus the coaching. And frankly, it makes sense, right? If somebody knows they're being watched, if every week they're meeting with somebody to speak about how they're doing, what challenges they have, one would expect that they're going to improve. But the proof is there now. Certainly, coaching alone does a great job. Sometimes some interventions like these, training makes a big difference just to introduce distinctions and knowledge. But without a doubt, it's a powerful intervention. And to me, I think, a lot of organizations, quite frankly, are lemmings, right? Once they see something working somewhere, they're going to want to adopt it. And that's why we've seen the growth of coaching. Thank you.
Nice the way you set the tone and shared your insights, and therefore I'm going to build on this, Andrew, to get to Brian, our friend out here. Well, Brian, there are two layered questions I'm going to ask you. One is the context of the pandemic, and with the end of the pandemic, how are you addressing these demands in leadership coaching arena? Alongside, piggybacking on what Andrew just now said, are there any standards or best practices, assuming higher level of importance in the context of pandemic, to really make that efficacy to be improved? And how are you addressing it based on your experience?
Indeed, and thank you for having me as well. Greetings, everyone from Silicon Valley. In the pandemic, much like many of you, we immediately were shocked as things really started to shut down as to what might happen in the world and what might happen in the business of coaching. But as many of you probably know, a large amount of coaching is done virtually, always has been. The effectiveness of virtual versus face-to-face is often researched. I don't know that there's a definitive answer, I must say. But regardless, it's very easy, of course, for coaching just to shift completely virtually. And we had a few clients that immediately canceled programs. So, we were about to start a program with a cruise ship company, a famous cruise ship company. You can imagine what happened to that coaching program, of course. And we had some healthcare that had to pause their coaching, but they have since restarted. And then many other organizations just kept marching along. And in fact, I don't know if there's statistics on the industry as a whole in the pandemic, but our own company, which really only does executive coaching, had a small amount of growth during the pandemic year, which we weren't forecasting. We were actually forecasting for a decrease in activities. So we're glad to see that. Some of our clients are starting to get back to in-person meetings, and we're creating policies and protocols for that. Or of course, the Delta variant is now starting to put more of a stop to it. But yeah, so in the pandemic, you can see ongoing activity, and certainly a good time for leaders to seek the assistance of a coach to help them navigate what is obviously some very troubling times, especially when it was first starting. Now you have to remind me the second part of that question, because it was sort of a double-barreled question. And you're muted.
Yeah. I was just asking you, Brian, in addition to the context of the pandemic, which you beautifully brought out to the perspectives, and it was very meaningful for me, and I'm sure for the audience too. The second part of the question is connected to that. In the context of pandemic, are there some newer or fresh benchmarks or practices that are coming up, seen on the horizon, or you are touching with them in the work that you do in Coach Source?
Yeah, so in the context of the pandemic, newer practices and whatnot, we are seeing some shorter term engagements. So very often the coaching engagements might be 6 months and might be a large amount of hours for 6 months. But us and some other firms have had launched some kind of crisis-focused interventions that are much shorter, 6 weeks. So for example, we launched a 6-week program, and we used coaches that only had been through, who had been leaders during really tough crisis situations, which was a pretty fascinating way to design it. And then, of course, the virtual, you're seeing there's these app-based discounters that do coaching, and you're seeing a lot of growth there as well. I don't know if there's any, we do some team coaching, but that's a lot harder to do if we can't get together. So I don't know if there's other, new ways of coaching that have been created necessarily, but some of these other ones I've mentioned are still certainly continuing.
Well, I'm very curious, Brian. I'm getting back to you. Well, there is a sense of making it shorter and quicker that's happening as a sort of a trend. And there is this notion, at least we need to carry as coaches, that the longer enduring the intervention is, the efficacy will be more. So how are you balancing this requirements or demands? Make it shorter, sweeter, but yet achieve those desired outcomes.
We debate this too. is longer and you know, longer, more hours useful, or shorter, sweeter. And you know, we very typically will do 6-month engagements, and we'll put a bunch of hours into that, maybe 30 hours, something like that, 30, 40, 25, something in that range. And then we also do really short assignments, and we do measurements, which I'll talk about a little bit later, this mini survey. And we have found that it's generally comparable results. So I tasked our head of research to look into this more, and she looked at academic studies, and the results are very inconclusive in terms of how much coaching is the right amount to help someone. The studies do show that it's the quality of coaching more than the quantity of coaching that really makes the difference. And many of you who are coaches probably know you might have one session with one big aha, one big insight that it happens to occur in that one session. I see people seem to like that. And that's what it takes, right? And then with other leaders, you go for a year and not much happens. So the research is inconclusive on that one. It's the best I've seen so far.
Good. As I understand from you, the jury is still out, but I'm going to go to Andrew in the same question to check his perspective, ascertain that. Andrew, you're also, apart from giving coach-specific training, you're also in the C-suite training. Do you see similar trends of what Brian is talking about, or something different? And if whatever that be, whether it's overlapping or different, I'd like to listen and engage you with the audience on this.
Yeah, thanks. What I found during the pandemic is, first of all, where we saw the most demand was in the companies that did well during the pandemic, right? Technology companies growing very, very quickly. Same issues as always. Highly technical people don't always have the emotional intelligence, the softer skills. And so coaching was super important. So that's number one. The companies lots of companies thrived. And so those were where I saw. I've seen a lot of coaching in people taking on new roles for whatever reason. I don't know if that has to do with the pandemic or not, but in my own coaching practice, I'm seeing a lot of that. The one thing I've noticed during COVID that's been a great opportunity for coaches is, whereas before we might have been expected to drive or meet with the client in person, now we have the opportunity to expand our practice so that we become national and international experts, because we have Zoom and people are okay with that. And it's really good. I'm actually not looking forward to the time where I have local clients expecting me to drive through traffic and absorb that cost and annoyance. But I've seen, a ton of coaches are doing that. Healthcare, Brian noted that initially maybe there were some clients that were stopped. I'm seeing a lot of our graduates who are physicians or healthcare and get into coaching now are having a field day coaching, particularly physicians and clinicians who are feeling burnt out, very frustrated. And so that's a big one. In terms of the question of shorter or longer, I have to tell a story about Marshall Goldsmith. I shadowed him about 20-something years ago. He was generous enough to let me follow him. And I remember asking him a question, because he gets paid a ton of money, more than I think I'll ever make for an engagement. And I said, Marshall, how you meet with your executives one day a month for a year, and they pay you all this money if you get results. I said, don't they want more time with you? And his answer was perfect. He said, listen, I'll give them as much time as they want, but they want less time. They want to see results with less time. And that's what I'm paid for. And I think in coaching, one way to look at this is, if the research doesn't tell us what gets results, let's look at our clients. What our clients want is high impact, and they love coaching because you get that high impact with short, powerful meetings over time. So I've adopted that in the 20 years I've been coaching too. I'll give them as much time as they want. They don't want the time. They want results, and they want to have a coaching engagement set up so that we ask powerful, impactful questions, have them come to conclusions, have them have new insights. So that's what I've seen. I like that distinction. It's quality over quantity. But the market says, I love coaching because, I'm not this invasive consulting team. I'm not asking you to outsource your brains. I'm coming here trusting your wisdom. Let's make this happen together in some short, concentrated sessions.
What I pick up from both of you is that pace is picking up, but no compromise on quality in the results that you're shown. Well, that's quite interesting to move on to where I am. But on the lighter side, Andrew, you could be spending more time with your family. The crib is normally okay. I couldn't invest time with my family, with my kids, my wife, my relatives, my folks. But I suppose this is becoming an opportunity for that too, apart from the opportunity of scaling up and making it very boundaryless in that sense. Good. So Brian, I'm moving on to you. You're pioneered, and I'm picking up the cues that you shared now. Having successfully pioneered and focused to help leaders achieve positive, measurable, and long-term changes in their behaviors, can you elucidate and share to the audience the strategies and the approaches that you've undertaken and work for you?
Yeah, so we've referenced Marshall Goldsmith a few times here, and I started to work for him in 1997 for about 8 to 10 years. And I was at a program where we were all going to coach leaders. And in the spur of the moment, from the front of the room, he told the whole group of coachees that I have an idea. We won't charge you for our coaching service until we're done in 1 year from now. And then we're only going to charge you if you get better. And all of us in the back of the room, as coaches who were about to coach started shifting in our chairs. Like, what the heck is he saying? And those of you who know him know he's very funny and thinks of stuff, immediately, whatever. So he promised this, and we then had to deliver it. Thankfully, he had a plan, which was his whole process of coaching that some of you know. But within that was an idea called a mini survey, which is basically a metric to ask everyone around the leader along the way whether that leader has been improving in their leadership skill. So it's not if you're familiar with the 360 tool, it's not redoing the 360 tool all over again, which can be a common practice. Instead, it's just asking on the area of development that the leader was working on, have you seen improvement in the last 6 months, something like that? And we use those at our firm today. It's a very effective tool for my coachees, the ones that I coach, to say, hey, this is the final exam. This is the midterm exam. We're going to ask everyone around you if they've actually seen you improve. And if they haven't seen it, then we should question how effective have we really been. You might feel it was effective. Maybe your boss feels it was effective, but those around you are very often the customers or the recipients of your new and improved behavior. So that's why we have this metric called a mini survey. And I've done talks just on this, where I share the whole idea, and anyone can use it. I would encourage anyone who's a coach in the room to look this up on Marshall's site, or we talk about it some on ours, and just use it. There's nothing copyright about it. It's just a great simple tool that you can use to reinforce the leadership learnings. I think, as usual, what gets measured gets done. So might as well put some measurement into your coaching practice.
That's very interesting. I'm also picking up another cue. Both of you have been talking about Marshall Goldsmith and the seminal book of his, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. I'm going to move on to Andrew to check out on this proposition as Brian brings in this perspective, the mini surveys. Well, you earned an MBA from the prestigious Harvard Business School and rise to the ranks of a big major management consulting firm, and then moved into freelance consulting and training. What are the key driving factors which motivated you to move into the executive coaching space? And if what got you then at that point in time, how far have you traveled? And it's all about exploration, leadership coaching in the continuum of your life and work with the clients and the organizations. How far have you moved on to say, yeah, when I look back, what got me here is not just what got me there.
Right. Well, good. So there were two issues going on when I was working for a management consulting firm. One, I had met the woman of my dreams, going to get married, start a family, Very hard to be a management consultant flying all over the country, getting on airplanes at 5 a.m. on a Monday, not coming back till late afternoon, Thursdays and Fridays. Number two, I had a couple of client experiences. We were paid, I don't know, $250,000 to do a diagnostic at most of the companies we're at. That was our start. And so I'd bring in a team of smart folks. We get on all the analysis and we present a 500-page PowerPoint to the client about all their benchmarking opportunities. And 2 or 3 clients in a row said, this is about right. They just sort of nod their head politely. Yep, I thought this is what it would say. And at some point I was tired and I just said, I don't understand. You just paid $250,000 for this study. You already knew the answer. Why did you hire us? And the answers came back the same. They said, look, I don't really need this team of analysts you have. We have those. I don't really need this PowerPoint. It's cool, but I kind of can, what I want is someone I can talk to. I have people gunning for my job. I'm in a politically very difficult situation. And if I can get one safe person who's smart, who can be a sounding board, who can be there on my side objectively, that would be so powerful. And after I heard that a couple times, I realized I don't have to fly around. I don't have to manage a very challenging team of analysts. I can just be a coach. And I don't even know if I called it coaching at the time, but that's what it became. And so I started that. It took me 6 months to figure out how to market, right? You can't go around saying I'm super smart. I come from all these places. What's your problem as a leader? I talked to Marshall Goldsmith at that time. As I said, I couldn't do what Marshall Goldsmith does. People will hire Marshall Goldsmith to read the phone book. They weren't going to do that for Andrew Knightlick. You can't even spell my name, and you see it on the screen right now. So I had to figure out how to position myself properly. Once I did, though, everything started working out. I mean, clients tend to be very generous. If they like your work, they'll refer you to others in the organization. They'll continue to hire you. I worked with nonprofits at the board level. That means 12 to 18 people who got to see me and refer me to their other organizations. And then, gradually people started coming to me saying, can you teach me what you're doing? That's how the Center for Executive Coaching came along. I had the opportunity to write a couple of guerrilla marketing books with the great late J. Conrad Levinson. I wrote some of my own books. The beauty of coaching is the sky is the limit. You see my background here. This is my home office. It appears that my Jack Russell Terrier has opened the door to say hello to me. But, I live a blessed life, and all the opportunities are up here as a coach. We can write books, we can speak, we can create content, we meet wonderful people. And so for me, the evolution is I get to be at home with a family that I love. I get to play, I play tennis every day. I'm surprised I'm not sweating through this shirt. I had to throw it on quickly before, doing the stuff I was doing before this. So that for me is how it happened. It was just saying consulting's not for me. I hear what the market is saying. I think I'd be good at that. I'm a good listener. I can facilitate well. And I love working with top leaders on their most pressing issues. So anyway, that's how it happened for me. I don't see why it wouldn't continue to happen. This is a wonderful, brilliant lifestyle business. I work with amazing people. And so, perhaps I lack ambition, but I just need one parking space in the lot. I don't need the whole lot.
Well, I can't help but laugh. And, quite admittedly, what you brought out is the mojo for coaching. And that's another book written by legendary Marshall Goldsmith. I could see you smiling ear to ear and, so happy and so excited. And it's not about regret of quitting consulting. It's about the pride and the continuing enhancing pride that you really associate with coaching. Excellent. It makes me more exuberant listening to you. Wow. I'm going to use this and catapult this exuberance to move on to Brian to bring out, what could be more exuberant for him than what he said so far. Brian, we talked about the short-term engagement, not compromising quality, and that's a balance to be struck. I'm going to bring another balance. You have 1,000-odd coaches working for you for Coach Source. And you've been doing mini surveys and whatnot. But every organization, and therefore in a very general way across organizations and culture, they have their own requirements. So how do you bring that balance to really have a standardized practice of what your coaches do for the organizations in culture building and coaching, but at the same time, ensuring the balance of making it tailor-made or customized for requirements?
Yeah, of course. With 1,100 coaches, I get asked this a lot. How do you possibly know them? How do you make sure they do the thing they're supposed to do when they're coaching? So maybe the first part of that is we have a whole screening process and criteria that we use for the coaches that we seek out. And then as they get into our network, many of us in the organization also get to know them. And back in the olden days, I used to travel. I used to fly a lot, and I would fly places, and I would meet coaches. And actually, one of my last trips before the pandemic was for Delhi had an ICF conference that I got to keynote at, and of course, I met some of the coaches in our network there when I was there, and that's pretty common to get to know them more. We have databases that help power all of this so that we can bring the client some of the right criteria that the client asks for. So yesterday I was talking to a client, and they really want coaches with tech experience who've been in the tech industry, but they also said ICF certification is important to them, but not vital. And they told us their locations. And so we can just from 1,100 coaches, we can narrow down to just those that would meet the criteria that this particular client is asking for. And then in terms of what do they do, we then set up all the milestones that we're expecting the coaches to meet within given assignments. And that can vary. But many assignments will have something like a introductory meeting. There would probably be a feedback debrief. There would probably be a meeting with the boss and maybe a meeting with HR. And so we program all of that ahead of time in our online system. And so when the coaches are on assignment, they've got an orientation and then to that particular assignment. And then they're just expected to kind of hit some of these key milestones and track them for us in the system. And then we can share that back to the company who's hired the coaches to see that the coaches are doing what was being asked. The actual details of the methodology can vary to some. So many of us came from Marshall, so we kind of follow his approach, but many coaches are trained in other places and other ways. And that's okay, because the Marshall approach works for certain types of leaders looking to do certain types of things. But there's other approaches, that are other people train, like Andrew, that they may have different versions or nuances for how they coach. And that's great, because then we would feel like we could, someone needs a coach with a lot more introspective approach and creating great insights. There would be different kinds of coaches for that, and maybe not the Goldsmith coach. So that's part of our job, is to try and get to know that and know how to deploy that properly.
What I pick up from you, Brian, is that the high sense of process orientation. And while in the process orientation, also being flexible and adaptable for the clients and the sponsors' needs. This is brilliant insight. I really take away this, and I'd like to work on this more and more for improving. And as I said at the beginning, being on the road to mastery. Well, I'm now getting to Andrew. Brian, you talked about this process and tailor-make at the same time, not to compromise quality. Here is somebody who's written a book on guerrilla marketing. 6 steps to build your $1 million coaching practice, guerrilla marketing for coaches. And typically, in my understanding, Brian, Andrew, limited to at this point in time, a guerrilla tactic implies unconventional surprise strategies. Can you share some insights about how we can connect leadership coaching to guerrilla marketing? Because I would like to be unconventional, but I would not like to be knee-jerk and do something ad hoc. I'd like to be watchful of that. But I'd like to pick your brain, and more than pick your brain, pick the heart in you of the gorilla.
Sure. Well, in that style of guerrilla warfare, and I understand, one of the responses to Jay's title, guerrilla marketing, sometimes is, why do we have to use warfare as a metaphor? So I understand if that can make people feel uncomfortable, but it's thinking differently, being creative and being agile. And so it starts for me with psychology. Why does someone hire a coach? And it's very different. Let's say my sink clogs. When my sink clogs with water, I know I have to hire a plumber, right? There's no doubt. We have that connection. The trouble with coaching and the coaching market is when a leader has a problem, or maybe they're not getting the impact they want. Maybe they're getting tough feedback. They don't think the way we think about a clogged sink and say we have to hire a plumber. They don't immediately say, I need to hire a coach, right? So we have to start with the psychology of the person buying the coaching, or maybe it's a sponsor as well. And so why do people hire an expert? They hire an expert when they have a problem or a challenge or an opportunity they can't quite grasp. So step one for me, if you're building a coaching practice and thinking like a guerrilla marketer, is to understand that and to think of yourself as more than a coach. If you want to be a commodity, just market yourself as a coach. There's plenty, as Brian said, there's plenty of low-cost apps that do this now. If you want to work in the C-suite, I think you have to associate yourself with a problem you solve that brings value. So in the marketing messages I've written and helped other people write as coaches, we don't even use the word coaching right up front. You know, you don't want to say, I'm Andrew Knightlick, I graduated from here, I have this, and I'm a coach. I don't think that's going to work. That's going to put you into the commodity market. What you want to do is say, I am a leading expert in helping such and such a leader, very specific type of leader, get this kind of result. Or this type of leader comes to me when they struggle with whatever. That's what I had to learn to be successful. Quite honestly, everything else flows from that. There's only so many ways to get visible, right? You're either going to do it through referrals, alliances, educational marketing, like we're doing here to a degree, some online marketing with LinkedIn, maybe being leaders in associations. But step one is understanding that critical psychology. Why would someone want to hire an outsider and be vulnerable and so on? We have to find a problem, something at stake big enough. And so I don't even use coaching in the language I use to market and to sell. I'm just asking about a problem. Is it big enough to justify my fees? I learned this from consulting. And I think we have a lot to learn from consultants. They've been around longer. They get tapped into bigger budgets. They reach decision makers more, at the top of the organization. So that would be my number one suggestion for guerrilla marketers out there. Don't market yourself as a coach. Market yourself as somebody who brings value, as an expert that solves a critical problem that your leaders would say they have. That's the other problem. A lot of coaches push a problem that's based on their own biases, transform yourself. I hate hearing that. Leaders don't wake up in the morning saying, transform me. They wake up in the morning saying, I'm not going to hit my numbers. My people aren't doing what I need them to do. Stuff like that. So that's where we have to position ourselves.
Well, so much you said, so very candidly and so naive, Andrew. I'm now getting to really, we challenge both of you before we move on to the Q&A segment of the audience. The challenge is about, you can both answer from your perspectives. Are there times that you encountered when you faced unexpected fiascos in leadership coaching engagements? And are there some key disappointments or failures which you ran amok into? How did you grapple? How did you overcome? I'd love to hear this from both of you.
Well, pick a victim. Brian, you want? I guess I'll. Do you want to go first? It's sort of your turn, or I can go. How do you want to?
No, go ahead. I'm still working on my answer.
All right. Well, look. Here's my experience. Almost every time I've had a coaching fiasco, it's because the front end of the process was done poorly. What the ICF calls the contracting phase. So working with a leader that wasn't really coachable, working with a leader who wasn't there. Wasn't ready for coaching. But, like I had one last year. 20 years in, I'll still have them. It was a pretty good engagement. But here's what happened. A couple of things. One, there was no sponsorship or true advocacy for the person I was coaching in the organization, right? So his boss was about 82 years old and sort of tuned out, should have retired, didn't really know my client very well. HR didn't really know him very well. My client had some conflicts going on with colleagues who were technically more senior than him. And so he was an island. He didn't have advocacy, and you can't shift the burden of supporting someone to the coach, right? So what I did poorly was I didn't take enough time to say, well, who's really advocating for him? How do we all work together? That's number one. Number two, same client, same problem. I thought we were making great progress. And what does he go and do? He goes and says something to a junior employee, a woman, that he shouldn't have said, right? That was perceived as harassing and stuff like that. And of course, in the culture today, particularly in the United States, that's not tolerated at all anymore. And it's heartbreaking to the coach because we can't control everything that our clients do. And so now I'm doing damage control with HR, and did we talk about this, and stuff like that. So when there's been fiascos, usually it's not setting up properly up front. What are the expectations? Who else is involved to support my client? Things like that. But then you just never know what's going to come up. I call it friendly fire, where a client does something, the market changes, they have a new boss, who knows, things like that. Coaching to me, I'll use an American baseball. I wonder if cricket would be a good analogy too. You're up at bat against the pitcher, and instead of the pitcher throwing one ball, they're throwing 7 at the same time. A beanball, a curveball, a fastball, a slider. And if you're the coach, you have to be ready to hit those balls because stuff comes at you all the time. But I would say that generally, if I do the preparation up front, have the right conversations with the right people to set goals, get agreement, most of the time the engagement goes well. You're on.
Yeah, and
I could not have asked a better response, Andrew. You've been so much flowing and authentic about what you said. I'm sure this will also given a bit of a preparatory time for Brian to reflect and come over to us. What, Brian? Where does this take you?
I was jokingly saying, which story should I tell? I have many. Like this. But I also like the insight. It's so true that most of those failures are always contracting related failures for sure. Now this one I have, actually, I don't think I can blame on contracting. So this is about 20 years old now, but it was under the Marshall way of pay us when we're done and only pay us if you get better. And so I was hired to coach at sort of a head of accounting who really should have been a professor in his real life or something. He liked to talk and talk and talk and talk and change subjects and go on. And it was driving people crazy. You know those types of folks, right? The long talkers, and you avoid them, especially if it's at 4:30 on a Friday, because you're going to get stuck in a conversation and you're never going to get out, and you will be very late, especially when that person's your boss. So I was asked to coach this individual and to stop this type of behavior. And we did a lot of good work, it felt like, in making this happen. Everything from having him observe visual cues to even empowering his staff for us, this means timeout in American football. They were empowered to start to do this when he was going on and so on. So we did the mini survey that I described earlier. And everyone said he absolutely got better. And this is great news for me because it means I'm finally going to get paid for working with this guy, except one person, the boss. The boss didn't see any change. Now, by the letter of the law, I'm still allowed to get paid because the contract says the majority of people have to have observed their improvement. So we did the job. Everyone said he improved. I should get paid. But she wasn't happy. He hadn't improved, according to her. And I wasn't going to argue that with her, of course. And what it really meant is that I thought we were spending enough time with her too, but obviously we weren't. And whatever it was he was doing wasn't working with her. So we actually had to go back and add a few months to the contract. I didn't charge anything more, of course, and work this further, to the point where the boss actually started to see the improvement. And I don't know in the end, I think she might have been just nice to us and said, yeah, okay. And we concluded the contract, but I don't know in the end if she really was fully satisfied with that. I think my learning is that you just have to, you got to realize the boss is the most vital, probably, stakeholder of this process. And even if you're getting to everyone else successfully with the change message, if the boss isn't noticing it, you may have some trouble ahead. And that's someone you really have to be focusing on.
And absolutely great listening to this story of yours. I know there are many other stories, but as much you said, time out the boss or the person whom we're coaching from talking, we need to time out ourselves to go to the Q&A.
Yeah.
So otherwise we'll be on and on. Bhaskar, my good friend, can you bring up the questions? from the Q&A segment.
Absolutely. Thank you. And Andrew, when you were talking about commoditizing myself as a coach, equating to all the low-end apps that are available in the market, it gave me shivers. I need to provide that value. Yeah, that reminder is very nice. Thank you so much for that. There are a lot of questions on the chat, Uday, Brian, and Andrew. One thing which caught
We
me.
should pick up the key ones, Bhaskar, considering the time.
I'll start with the one which came first. That's visible to you all?
Yes, yes.
From Vinita Joseph. You don't get to view a whole person, neither experience the person as much as you do in in-person meeting.
One, if you can go for it, Brian or Andrew.
I don't know that it has too much because a fair amount of coaching has been virtual all the time anyways. As a coach, though, I will be honest, I actually like at least some amount of face-to-face. I really do. I'd like to see more of the cues and everything as was described in the question. But if that's not going to be a choice, I don't know that I've seen a lot of change in how this gets done. We probably turn the cameras on all the time now. I mean, it wasn't that long ago when we would do a call and it was still just telephone only, but now we've all defaulted in the pandemic to cameras on all the time. So you do have at least that to work with.
Yeah, I would agree. I haven't seen too much change. To be perfectly candid, my preferred method of coaching is with a cell phone, not even Zoom. I like walking around. I'm like I have so much energy. I have to calm it. So I don't like sitting in a chair with Zoom with a client, and I don't like being face to face with a client because, again, I don't like the traffic and the driving. And I'm on some assessments, I'm a 1 on sociability. I'm a super introvert. So for me, a cell phone is wonderful. You don't see the facial expressions. You don't pick up on the cues, but I have to listen so hard to hear it through the voice. And, it's selfish, but it works for myself. But anyway, virtually, I think works very, very well. The one exception is, I think Brian noted before, is with team coaching. It used to be we could do a wonderful team retreat and lots of, there's something about human chemistry on a team. I think that's the main thing that perhaps has suffered with Zoom, but even there are workarounds that we can do. It's just a little bit more two-dimensional when I'm working with teams.
This is terrific unlearning for me, I would say, listening to both of you, getting adaptable. And then you're saying, Andrew, now, just on a cell phone, not even Zoom. Well, I would like to attempt that. Bhaskar, maybe another one.
Yes, this is for Brian.
Yeah, I saw that question pop up a little bit ago. How do you get this done? Keeping in mind the confidential and safe space we hold for our clients. So the mini survey is conducted anonymously. You usually want to get at least 5, if not more, stakeholders around your leader to answer the survey questions. And they're very short and people are not identified individually, except the boss, which allowed for the story I told moments ago. So it is anonymous. I mean, obviously with any 360, you might be able to sort of figure who said what. But the more raters you have, the better it is. And then once we have those results, we actually only share them with the leader that we are coaching and discuss it with them. And it's up to the leader if they'd like to share it beyond them. As a firm, we don't share individual results, but we will aggregate. So after a certain number of leaders have been through coaching, it actually is a great tool for us to share with HR and other interested parties about the effectiveness of coaching. So I think it strikes a pretty nice balance. And as always, you'll want to make sure this is clear in the contracting arrangements that are set up ahead of time, because that could dictate something different.
Thank you. Next one would be for Andrew. How does the horizon look like for leadership coaching over the next 5 years?
It's to me, the word VUCA indicates opportunity, right? We have a volatile, uncertain, chaotic, ambiguous situation, that's perfect for coaching, right? The coaching conversations are best when we don't know the what or the how, right? If there's best practices, that's where we get into advice and training and other stuff. So I think the question answers it. Because the world is so uncertain, leaders more than ever before need someone to talk to, those who are willing. So I think that's it. I mean, the wish I have is that we have more leaders who are coachable, right? If coaching were a superhero, kryptonite of coaching would be lack of coachability. And I think there's still too many leaders who aren't coachable. And so to me, that's the main opportunity. The coaching is there. There's plenty of coaches. What we need are more leaders who understand the power of sitting down with someone, being a little bit vulnerable in that VUCA world so that they don't make, let's say, rash or foolish decisions that we see so often on our national and international stage here. So I think it's a very bullish time for coaching. And even though there are lots of coaches, there aren't lots of great ones, right? I would say there's still too many coaches that are too fluffy, vapid. They're pushing some sort of philosophy or pseudoscience. And so I think that's the other thing. I mean, there's plenty of opportunity for those of you who are credible, who have substance, who can look an executive or leader face to face, in the eye, and just be there to listen and help them move forward. So I'm incredibly optimistic and bullish. I think coaching is so much better than, even in our program, we'll teach a coaching model for strategic planning, right? Why would you outsource your brains to $1 million consulting firm when coaching, when you can trust the people in an organization to have the wisdom to plan and set strategy? So coaching can apply to so many things. It's less expensive, less invasive, more respectful of the client. I'm completely bullish on it as a profession.
Wow, those emoticons flying away says it all. Next one is
Bhaskar, just to sound you, we need to be mindful of time. So it's closing to the hour, top of the hour. So I'd leave it to you.
Sure. The next is for Brian. Subhash asked this question.
What's next in executive coaching? We do have research that we do, and the studies are available on our website for free for anyone who's interested. We look at trends in the field, and the trends are up ahead are nothing earth-shattering. We asked people to predict, and they said coaching with existing leadership development programs was the top trend over 15 possible trends for the next 3 to 5 years, which is something we've been doing forever. As is teaching leaders coaching skills, something we've been doing forever. Team coaching was number 3. That's pretty new and pretty interesting, but has been around. And so those are probably the top 3. There's not necessarily anything earth-shattering, or there's not like the next iPhone of coaching necessarily out there. I mean, you are seeing these app-based discounters gaining a lot of traction, of course, in the field. And with Prince Harry going to one of them, that's pretty interesting. So stay tuned. We'll keep up our research studies and let you know what else we see.
Yeah, we continue to learn and upgrade ourselves, upskill ourselves. Yes. Thank you. And there are a lot of other questions which I think during the discussion it got somewhere addressed. So I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of you.
Bhaskar, just to intervene very briefly. Thank you, Brian and Andrew, for bringing this very enriching perspectives. I really enjoyed being with you. So long ago, there was a quote which I came across. For the beginner, happiness is a goal, and for the happy, it is a process. For a coach who's a beginner, wherever he or she is, it's a destination to be reached. But for the happy coach, it's a process. We addressed exploring leadership coaching. Exploring is all about continuing. It's all about engaging and constantly being excited of the frame of continuum of learning. I'm really happy and blissful at this point in time. Take a bow to both of you for bringing in this real, diverse, rich perspectives. And thank you, Bhaskar, for holding the container for us so beautifully. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Stay safe until we meet again in some other forum. Bye-bye.
Thank you.